Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and I'm here with a slightly different video. This is, of course, Imperator Rome, but this will be an Imperator Rome Top 10 Strongest Starting Nations video. And at number 10, we're going to start with looking at Etruria. Etruria, believe it or not, is a very strong nation in this game. It starts with 351 pops and is in position to be able to easily expand throughout the Italian peninsula and into Gaulish, Frankish lands, as well as up towards the Balkans. Yes, it does have a Carthaginian neighbor here, which is probably its biggest threat, if we're going to be completely realistic here. If Etruria is being played by a player in a single-player environment, there is no reason Etruria cannot go toe-to-toe with Rome and take it out at the beginning of the game. So for this reason, I am going to put Etruria here at the 10th position in our top 10 strongest countries from the position of starting position, and this is very heavily favored by strategic starting positions. So if there are some countries that just really have things nice, where they can expand infinitely without another major power around. And then there's some countries that are just, they're a major power and they're surrounded by major powers. And so you're going to notice that I take that into account in this top 10. Which is going to be blatantly apparent with number 9. Number 9 is the Seleucid Empire is my number 9 pick. Now there's a lot of reasons for this. Yes, it has a huge population at 3,751. It has several subjects to include Bactria and Parthia. Now the problem here is that these Bactrian and Parthian subjects are very strong in their own right. In fact, Bactria is one of the largest nations in the game, and it's going to want its freedom. The Seleucid Empire, Seleucid Empire, however you want to say it, most Americans will say Seleucid, and most Europeans say Seleucid. If there's a correct version, I'm not so sure, but it was many years ago, so unless somebody from the Seleucid Empire can actually get on the phone and say it's Seleucid or Seleucid, I'm not going to buy it. Anyway, getting back to the topic here. The Seleucid Empire starts completely fractured. It has got the most internal strife of any country in the game. So in your starting position, your country is ready to go into a civil war from the day you start the game. So with that type of internal strife, huge subject nations that want to break away, huge nations bordering you like Armenia and Phrygia that are very strong and will want to go to war with you to take your nice property. And then the biggest nation in the game of Maria, sitting here on this big long border, who's going to constantly be wanting to fight you all through your gameplay. The Seleucid Empire is not one that starts in a convenient position. It has probably the most inconvenient, most surrounded positions in the game. And with its internal strife completely falling apart from the day you start the game, I'm putting Seleucid Empire at number 9 in this list. Number 8, Bactria. Bactria sits here with over 1,000 population, which would make it a major power in its own right. However, Bactria starts again as a subject of the Seleucid Empire. But that's not much of a problem because Bactria can pretty much break away from the Seleucid Empire at any point it wants to, as the Seleucid Empire is going to find itself at war with Morea, at war with Phrygia, at war with Armenia, constantly, and in the middle of civil wars constantly. So anybody playing Bactria should have zero issue in actually breaking away from the Seleucid Empire and then going further, eating into the Seleucid Empire. Bactria is also a country that has some cultural and religious issues, but it's far more manageable because, well, Bactria is 1/3 of the size of the Seleucid Empire. So Bactria can easily just stay a vassal of the Seleucid Empire while it takes care of its inner turmoil. Once it gets its inner turmoil underway and it starts to get some religious unity and starts to get some cultural unity, then it can break away from the Seleucid Empire and start to eat into it. So Bactria is in a far easier position to play from the beginning of the game than the Seleucid Empire is, and that's why it's at the number 8 position. Number 7, Armenia at 717 pops is a virtual powerhouse. So it has fairly decent cultural cohesion, but it does have a little bit of some wonky religious turmoil. But again, it's nothing compared to some of these other larger nations. If Armenia can get its Zoroastrian religious issues in check early, it has incredibly. Can we see that? Not really, but it has incredibly defensive terrain because there are tons of mountains. This is supposedly terrain map mode, isn't it? Well, it's supposed to be. See, if I hover over here, you see impossible terrain, and hover over here, you see impossible terrain. Armenia is filled with choke points. That makes it very easy for Armenia to create defensive fortifications to secure its borders versus its larger neighbors. Well, it really has one larger neighbor to worry about, and then another larger neighbor that could end up on its border relatively quickly. So, if Armenia can defend itself from the Seleucids and Phrygians due to its very nice terrain benefact, Armenia can quickly and easily eat through Atropatene, Albania, Iberia, Colchis, Lagia, if they want to go this way, and create themselves a very solid core in which they can then strike back into Phrygia or the Seleucid Empire as need be. So Armenia sits in a very nice position to be the most likely state in the area to form the Persian Empire. Okay, at number 6, Phrygia. Now, this is going to be this is my controversial pick here. Phrygia is a powerhouse. It's an absolute ridiculous powerhouse at 3,000 population. It's just a giant of a nation, and it can easily there can easily be arguments that could work to say that Phrygia is as good as the second strongest nation in the game from day one. The problem is something similar to how the Seleucid Empire starts here. The Seleucid Empire starts surrounded with a country that has a lot of inner turmoil. Phrygia starts, well, to an extent, surrounded by Egypt, Seleucid Empire, Armenia, who's not a huge threat, Thrace and Macedon, who are allies, and are a threat to Phrygia, regardless of if Phrygia knows that or not. Phrygia is surrounded like the Seleucid Empire. But the problem, or the benefit that Phrygia has compared to the Seleucids, is they're not as badly surrounded, meaning they don't have a very strong, stable Maria on their side. They don't have a Bactria that wants to break away, and they don't have a Phrygia on the other side of them. Phrygia only has a Seleucid Empire on this side, being its biggest threat, which is going to fall apart all on its own. So Phrygia has much less fear of the Seleucid Empire, because the Seleucid Empire has to, well, keep itself put together. Which means if a player plays Phrygia very, very, very aggressively in the beginning, they can in fact eat Thrace, eat Macedon, take over Greece, take over the Asia Minor, maybe even eat into the Balkans, and if they're really aggressive, they could eat Egypt, which could make Phrygia one of the strongest starting positions. And they can do that because they have a veritable army of subject nations, on top of having a veritable huge army themselves. So why do I have them at only 6th place? Because, again, like the Seleucid Empire, they start surrounded. Like the Seleucid Empire, they actually have a lot of inner turmoil that they're trying to take care of. And with this veritable army of subjects, at least one or two of them are going to want to break away, which means Phrygia has a lot of inner maintenance that it has to take on. It's not as bad as somebody playing the Seleucid Empire, but it is still pretty bad in its own right. So that is why Phrygia is only 6th place on this list, even though it has the capacity, if played early and played aggressively, could be maybe the second strongest nation in the world. So that is my caveat on Phrygia. Now, in 5th place, we're going to go to Rome. Rome is my 5th place contender because the game is called Imperator Rome, which shouldn't come as a shock to you all. Because the game is called Imperator Rome, there has been a lot of content and how do I put this? Events that Rome gets that other nations don't. Rome also has some very easy to pick on neighbors. So with easy to pick on neighbors, lots of content geared towards Rome, Rome is a very overpowered nation, even though it starts off a relatively small nation. Number-wise, it's not that much bigger than Etruria, but if played by a player, it can easily morph out into a gigantic powerhouse with unlimited growth potential. It can eat anywhere here if nothing's keeping it in check. The only thing it has to worry about to keep it in check is Carthage that starts relatively strong. But an AI played Carthage versus a player controlled Rome shouldn't be a problem for the player. So for that point, I put Rome at number 5 because the game is, in fact, Imperator Rome, and we know that there's going to be lots of events for Rome. Not to mention, it's in a beautiful start position to eat so much great territory. Number 4, Macedon. So, Macedon is a Diadochi. There's 5 Diadochis in the game. There's Macedon, Phrygia, Egypt, the Seleucid Empire, and what did I miss? Phrygia, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and Thrace? Thrace the 5th? It might be, yeah. But anyway, Macedon has a close relationship with Thrace out of the gate. So Macedon and Thrace are kind of like linked together, brother and sister, if you will. Though you can easily turn against Thrace if you want to as a player and expand into Thrace. That's not too hard of a thing to do. In the very beginning, knowing that Thrace is there to hold your hand, and you have all of this sweet, sweet Peloponnesian peninsula to eat into. Of course, in order to eat into this, you're going to be going to war with Phrygia, because a lot of these little client states down here are vassals of Phrygia. But Phrygia has to come through here over to here, or it does have some ships, but if you're a player, you can easily counter the ships. So Macedon, in my opinion, starts in a safer position than Phrygia does. It has a much more stable internal populace. Its Greeks are Greeks, and its Hellenists, it's stable religion, stable culture. Lots of nice land to eat. It's just got a very, I don't know. It's like Rome. It has an easy buffet of Greece to gnaw on, with Phrygia being its only real contender, and Phrygia is falling apart, unlike Macedon, which is a very cohesive country. And so that's why Macedon is 4 on this list ahead of Phrygia, is because Macedon is so cohesive from day one. Number 3, the powerhouse of Egypt. Egypt is a monster. It can expand very easily here into Cyrenaica, and Cyrenaica is actually fairly decent land. Yes, there's quite a bit of desert over on this end of it, but in here along the coast, those are some good cities there. And Egypt would only need to send 1 of its army contingents over here, because Cyrenaica is so weak militarily. And Cyrenaica doesn't have any diplomatic, any way to protect against Egyptian expansion. So there's first easy lunch. Second easy lunch is coming down here into the Kush area, down into the Horn of Africa. Very easy expansion. Lots of food to eat for Egypt. Egypt's only real concern is Phrygia off of the get-go. And Phrygia off of the get-go means that Egypt needs to set up diplomatic ties ASAP. Egypt needs to ally with the Seleucids. Egypt, if it can, needs to ally with Armenia. Egypt needs to ally with Carthage. Egypt needs to ally with Macedon. Egypt basically needs to ally with anyone big that will let them ally right off the bat. And if they can, put a decent amount of forts here in the area between Egypt and Phrygia. All the player has to then do is defend this bottleneck and let the alliances that it makes eat into Phrygia. An aggressive Phrygia versus Egypt isn't a problem in a NPC environment. So in a single player environment, Egypt should not have any problem holding off Phrygia. Of course, in a multiplayer environment, if you have a player in Phrygia wanting to come in and kill you as Egypt from day one, well, you might have a much bigger problem on your hands. So again, remember how I said Phrygia could be the second most powerful country in the world from day one? It can be if played aggressively and correctly by a good player. However, Egypt is a much easier place to play. So that's why it's number 3 on the list. It's very hard to screw up Egypt. The main problem Egypt has is it has no navy. It starts off with no navy. It needs to import wood. Once it gets that wood imported, it needs to then, after it's done expanding here and down into here and here, it needs to expand up to Crete ASAP. By getting Crete, it gets itself, well, this isn't a trade good map mode, but there is wood on the island of Crete. If it can get itself its own wood supply, which is right there, a short sail away in Crete, an island that's very easy for Egypt to take because most of these little city-states here are just that. They're little city-states. They don't have any big allies. They're just allied with each other basically on this island. So it's a very easy little and valuable chunk of land that Egypt could eat away ASAP. At the same time, Macedon could eat this right away ASAP. Phrygia could eat this up right away ASAP. This is a very tasty island that a lot of people ignore. Egypt, however, shouldn't. Egypt is going to want this island as soon as it can for that wood supply so that Egypt can build up a navy. If Egypt can build up a navy, well then Egypt is really a powerhouse. Egypt can propel itself anywhere it wants to expand and doesn't necessarily have to go through Phrygia. In fact, Egypt could just decide to go over here into Iberia and start eating all of this. Yes, it would be kind of a strange border gore situation, an Egyptian sandwich if you will, but Egypt could do that. And that's all based off of Egyptian naval power, which Egypt starts with no naval power. Egypt has no navy. It has no wood to make a navy, so that is the very first thing you need to do as an Egyptian player is get yourself wood. You can get yourself wood. You are in such a nice, safe little corner of the world that Egypt is easy mode, and that's why it's number 3 on the list. Number 2 on the list, the Rome Slayer, Carthage. Why is Carthage so highly placed in the power structure, according to me? Because A, it starts with 1,000 population, which sure it isn't 3,000 from Phrygia. It's like being a Bactria, right? But Bactria is way over here in the middle of nowhere, with Maria and the Seleucids in the way, not really anywhere to expand in this crappy region with bad land. Carthage, on the other hand, has all of this prime real estate in Iberia that it's theirs for the taking. It has all of this prime real estate here in France or Gaul or Franks it's there for its taking. In fact, Great Britain is there for Carthage. Scandinavia is there for Carthage. If Carthage kills Rome, right off the bat, which is what Carthage should do. Anyone playing Carthage should immediately destroy Rome. If they do that, there is nothing to stand in their way of absolute European dominance. With all of that land, that very good, profitable, great land to eat, with the next nearest major power of Macedon being the only thing that could cut into its European control, Macedon has quite a ways to go through some real hard terrain to navigate. There's lots of mountains in this area, including the Alps. It's hard for a Macedon to move up this direction. But for Carthage, which is a naval power from day one, it can sail anywhere here through the ocean. This is all prime Carthaginian real estate from day one. And that's why Carthage is the easy number 2 country on this list, because it starts with the power to wipe Rome out from the very second you start the game. And then it has basically unlimited expansion. Once it owns all of this, it is easily a bigger country than Maria, which is the number 1 on the list. Why is Maria number 1? Well, does it really even have to be pointed out? It's got 6,000 pops. That's double the next closest population. That's just a huge amount of population. It has all of this land here in India that's basically it's to take over. Who's here to stop Maria from eating India? Maria is actually a fairly stable country, religiously and culturally, unlike the Seleucid Empire. Maria is easy mode. This is the big bad. This is the Ottomans or the Ming of Imperator Rome. If you want to play Ming, well, then Maria is who you want to play in Imperator Rome. Yeah, easy mode. Not really much more I have to say about this. So that is, again, my top 10. I'll just quickly run through it one more time. At the 10 position, Etruria. At the 9 position, the Seleucids. At the 8 position, Bactria. At the 7th position, Armenia. At the 6th position, Phrygia. At the 5th position, Rome. 4th position, Macedon. 3rd position, Egypt. 2nd position, Carthage. And at the final 1st place position, Maria. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my channel and my content. Hopefully you're enjoying my content. If so, leave a like and subscribe. And until the next video, peace.